In this session, we're going to look into Microsoft AZ303 certification. So first, let's look at the agenda and then move on. First, we'll look into why Azure and what is Azure. That is, why should we take up Azure? There are other cloud services, cloud providers like AWS and Google Cloud. So why should we take up Azure? Then what it is? Then we'll be looking into 303 versus 304. Then we'll be looking into the certification of Azure 303 and also the architect's career. That is the Azure Architect's career, how you can move further. And then we'll be looking into the services which you should learn for the AZ303 certification, and finally how to get started. So after that, I'll be showing you the web page in which we'll be discussing what are the projects which are available. After that, my colleague will be joining the session and they'll be continuing the session further. They'll talk more about the certification and the career which you can take up. So for example, you might have some career questions or you might have any certification related questions. So you can ask all of those questions at the end and it will be answered by my colleague. Now let's start off with the first topic, which is why Azure. So first of all, numbers don't lie. So I wanted to introduce some numbers before starting off the session itself. So $1 billion has been invested just for security in Azure. You can see that R&D with 3,500 security experts, and this has been implemented only in Azure. So basically, they're investing $1 billion just for security. And let's say if you're taking on-premise setup, again, you'll have to set up all the security needs. You'll have to hire security professionals, and obviously that will cost a lot of money. So instead, you can go ahead with Azure, which they already do it for you because it's their data center. They don't want any breach over there. So they have it very secure. Second one is they have 100 plus services which you can immediately start off using after you create your Azure account. So you can immediately start building, deploying, provisioning, managing all those applications on the cloud. Also, 95% of Fortune 500 companies use Azure for their business needs. It's not required that the complete architecture should be hosted on Azure. Even if one service is used from Azure for their needs, even that basically means 95% of the Fortune 500 companies using one service from each and every let's say each and every company is using just one service from Azure. Even that basically means they're using Azure for their business needs. So now one more thing is that when you create an Azure account, you get all of this for free. First of all, you get the popular services like virtual machines, storage, databases, all for free for a whole year. That is 12 months of popular free services. Plus you always get 25 plus services which are always free. We can look into that further. So once you create an Azure account, you can just go ahead and search what are the free services, and also you will get 13,300 credit for one complete month. That is, you can basically explore any Azure service you want, and that will be obviously that particular money will be taken from the credit which is provided to you. So this is for practicing Azure. So if you start off with Azure, you don't need to invest anything. It's completely free to start off. And then the growth rate. So this is really important. Okay, so we all know AWS is the number one cloud provider in terms of public market share and the number of companies using it. Then comes Microsoft and then comes Google. Okay, so now you can see this increase from 2018 to 2019. So this is 2018's first quarter. This is 2019's first quarter. So same thing goes with all of these. So now AWS has grown in 12 months. AWS has grown 41%. Microsoft Azure has grown 75% and Google has grown 83%. So in this case, even though Google is the fastest growing cloud network, the second biggest is Microsoft, and I'm pretty sure Microsoft will soon catch up to AWS before Google Cloud does, because the investment in Microsoft Azure is increasing day by day and their growth rate is increasing day by day. Obviously, you can see this. So it's already a lot of companies are using AWS, and still AWS is still growing, but Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud are faster in growth rate. So this is again one of the reasons why you can take up Azure other than AWS. And also one more important thing is that the salary. So at the end of the day, once everything is done, we all need a job or we have to do something on what we're going to learn. So in this case, it's Azure Architect. So in USA, it's $107,000. This is the average salary. It's not the highest or the lowest. You can get lower when you start, and you can go even more higher. So you can maybe getting around 30 lakhs per annum if you're in India. If you are, let's say, a senior Azure architect or a senior cloud architect, in that case, you can get even 30-35 lakhs per annum. Okay, so now these are the average values taken from glassdoor.com. You can also go ahead and check it out. Okay, now moving ahead, what is Azure? So most of you would have an idea about Azure, because without that you would have not opened this particular training, that is AZ303. You would have not known what is it. Only if you know Azure, you would know what the certification is for. So now AZ303, as we know, it's regarding Azure Architect. And now, first of all, what is Azure? Azure is a cloud provider owned by Microsoft. So they basically provide various services like virtual machines, that is servers, databases, they provide storage, they provide analytics services, AI services, ML services, all of this via internet. That is, you can use all of these services over the internet on a web console or a CLI. So CLI in the sense command line tools. So that's what I'm coming to say. So you can either use command line tools, or you can directly use the web console, in which you can basically create these Microsoft Azure services and start using them. Okay, so now we've seen why do we need to choose Azure, because it provides a lot of free services for a lot of time, as well as they give you credits. And yeah, so that was the gist of it. So now let's just compare the AZ303 and 304 before going into and learning more about 303. So first of all, 303, implement and monitor an Azure infrastructure, implement management and security solutions, implement solutions for apps, and implement and manage data platforms. So in this particular certification, that is AZ303, please note the word implement. And now coming to AZ304, design monitoring, design identity and security, design data storage, design business continuity, and design infrastructure. So the main difference between AZ303 and 304 is, in 304 you come up with a solution for the given problem, and 303 is the let's say 303 basically what they do is, so in 304, if you're designing the architecture by providing a solution to a particular problem, the 303 person should be able to implement the given solution. And let's say if there's an error in the existing architecture, even the person who knows 303 should be able to implement a solution on that. So basically 304 is more of a theoretical view and 303 is more of a practical view. But both of this combined makes the Azure Architect, so you cannot split them. But these exams should be taken separately. So in that case, now let's look into the measured skills in AZ303 and 304. So in 303, implement and monitor an Azure infrastructure is the maximum, that is 50 to 55%. Is in this particular category, implement and monitor an Azure infrastructure. That is, you should be able to create an Azure infrastructure using various Azure services, as well as monitoring it using Azure services like, let's say, Azure Monitor and Metrics. Then implement management and security solutions. It basically means once you have an infrastructure, the infrastructure should be secure enough to host an application. And also the management, that is the overall management of the architecture, as well as the application hosted within the architecture, should be handled by you, and for that you should be able to provide solutions and implement solutions for applications. So obviously when you create an Azure architecture, why do you create it? To host an application inside that architecture. So now in AZ303 you should be able to provide and implement solutions for the applications within the Azure infrastructure. And then implement and manage data platforms. So basically storage like blob storage, table storage, document DB, Cosmos DB, which is basically right now SQL databases. So any data platform, you should be able to implement that as well. You should be able to create a database engine on Azure, and you should be able to implement and connect it with your Azure infrastructure which you have. So it's basically providing solutions and implementing it directly in the console. This is more of a practical view. Okay. So now coming to 304. So now 304, who has completed 304 examination, should have every single idea about how Azure works, how to provide a solution for a particular problem. It may be troubleshooting a particular solution, or it can be providing a completely new solution to a problem. Let's say you want to host a web application. Now if you're asking the architect should be able to design it theoretically. That is, so this is how it's going to be. So these are the services which you're going to use. This would be the cost at the end of a month. So that is basically designing it. Okay, so you can see first design monitoring. That is, once your architecture is available, you should be able to monitor it. Identity and security. That is, who can log into the application using Active Directory. You'll have to know that. Then security. So you can see here security and infrastructure is the most important concept over here, because while creating an infrastructure, it should be the best, it should be highly available, it should be resilient, it should be reliable, and also it should be really secure. So that's why infrastructure and security are the important concepts in AZ304. And also there is data storage, monitoring, and also business continuity. So in this case, business continuity is also really important. It should be really easy to migrate an application from an on-premise setup into the Azure architecture. So it should be either migrating it, so the migration process should be easy, as well as the process of creating a new architecture and hosting an application on Azure for the first time should also be easy, and that should take let's say you are having an application and you want to deploy it today, so the architecture should be able to do that. So that's what. So now combining 304 and 303, so you are designing an architecture, an infrastructure which is clearly secure on paper, and now you're using all of this to implement this on the Azure architecture. That is, once you implement it and once you implement all these services together, so now the architecture or the infrastructure is successfully running, and now you can host your application on it. And then once you host your application on it, you can start monitoring it and manage data platforms. So these two put together would make an Azure architect, but the examinations should be taken separately. So now let's concentrate more about the AZ303 certification and the architect career. So obviously you should complete and give away 2 examinations, only then you will get the official certification. So first of all, then you'll have to prepare for one particular certification at a time. Now to earn the certification or for Azure Architect, so you can see Microsoft Certified Azure Solutions Architect Expert. So to get this particular certification, you should complete the 303 and 304 exams from Microsoft. So now, how much does an AZ303 exam cost? First of all, because obviously everybody will have a budget of doing something. So now, if it actually depends on the country you're going to take up the exam in. If you're taking it up in United States, it will cost you around 165 USD. In India, it will cost you around 4,800 Indian rupees. If it is in Sri Lanka, it will cost you around 80 USD. I convert it to your money. Okay. So now this is how it works. Whichever country you're from, you can just go ahead to the Azure website in which they provide all the certifications, and then you can check it out. Now coming down, who is an Azure Architect? So we saw what is the AZ303 exam, which basically is implementing it. So now Azure Architect should obviously have both the examinations, that is 303 and 304. So we've already seen about that. You can take 303 first by knowing all about this. So later we'll be looking into the services which an Azure 303, the person who is going to give the Azure 303 certification has to know. That we'll see later. Okay, so now who's an Azure Architect? So an Azure Architect implements and monitors an Azure infrastructure. So this is the first one, obviously. Implement management and security solutions, implement solutions for apps, and implement and manage data platform. Okay, let me put it very simple for you. An Azure Architect should be able to create a complete architecture which will help you host a web application, a mobile application, or whatever application it is on the Azure cloud. So it is not just for applications, it can be for anything. And the Azure Architect should be able to provide solutions for all the problems which are being addressed. It can be an existing problem on an existing application which is hosted on Azure. So the Azure Architect should be able to troubleshoot it. And if there is a new project in which the client is asking for an cloud-based approach and you want to host it on Azure, so in that case, the Azure Architect should be able to create an architecture which enables the developers to host the application on that particular architecture without any problems. So this is basically an Azure Architect's job role. So now let's look at some job descriptions, a couple of job descriptions, to understand what exactly is the job role. Because if I just say something and say this is the job role, it might be true or it might not be. So that's why I pulled some over here. You can see it's Rackspace. Over here you can see it's Capgemini. Okay, so Capgemini and Rackspace. So I took job descriptions of an Azure Architect role and I'm just showing it to you. So at the top over here, all the red points, that is responsible for aspects of design. So as I told you, an Azure Architect should be able to design as well as implement. So in this case, they are telling that Azure Architect should be able to design. Coming down, so The Azure SME role will focus more on hands-on project delivery phase activities such as low-level design, build, configuration, engineering, and testing. So basically, they want an Azure architect who also understands the software development lifecycle as well as the DevOps lifecycle. So now, client consulting is one of the important things because you should understand what the client needs and create a solution on Azure according to that. Architecting and designing. So obviously, an Azure architect, from the name itself, you have to architect an infrastructure, and before architecting it, you are going to design what are you're going to need, and then deployment activities. So once you architected it and designed it, then you basically deploy all the services which you need and basically create a complete architecture using them. And you can see there is migration activities as well. Then testing Azure solutions for hybrid platforms. So let's say the client wants a hybrid platform of a private cloud and a public cloud. Maybe they want both Azure and AWS. In that case, the Azure architect should have an idea about other cloud services also, because obviously learning about other cloud services is also important. And yeah, so this is the job description which I took from Capgemini. So this basically covers everything we saw in the examination guide, in which I showed you this one. Yeah, so in this, the measured skills. So I think most of it was covered in this particular JD itself. Now looking at the second JD, so first, in-depth understanding of compute, storage, network components, including backup monitoring and DR environments requirements. So okay, so this I'll show you. So these are the services which you'll have to know. So there are some compute services, storage, network services, backup monitoring services that I'll show you. So these are something which you'll have to be very so your knowledge in these topics should be very in depth, because compute is the underlying integral part of Azure as well as storage and network. So these are the important services. Now coming down, you can see there is infrastructure as a service, which basically means virtual machines, which basically means storage, databases. So all of this is infrastructure as a service. So you're getting an infrastructure for a cost you have provided. And then there is serverless and then API management. Also in this particular solutions architect JD, you can see there is Jenkins, Spinnaker, Azure for DevOps. There is Azure for DevOps as well as Azure DevOps, Chef, Puppet. So they are basically asking you to also know DevOps tools and DevOps services, also understand Agile methodology, ALM, Scrum. So all of this should be really understood by you. So you can see they also need some web application server technologies like, let's say, Nginx, Apache, and then cloud applications design, software architecture, and practices. So you should be a complete package when you are becoming an Azure solutions architect. And when you're growing in that particular role, in that particular career, obviously you should start learning DevOps tools, because without DevOps tools, at least you should know Docker, you should know Chef, Puppet, you should know Jenkins and Kubernetes. So these are important services which you'll have to look into. So these are the JDs, guys. You can look into more JDs. You can understand what exactly the companies need. So first of all, you need an in-depth understanding of Azure, how it works, and all the services related to it: infrastructure as a service, serverless services, API services. So every single service which you need, as well as some extra services is required. But to get the certification of AZ303 and AZ304, which is Azure Architect, in this case, you don't need to know Jenkins or any other DevOps tools. Now coming down, what are the services which you'll have to learn? So as I told you, you need to know compute, storage, networking, monitoring, all that. So now over here you can see there is compute, virtual machines and containers. So these are very important, and virtual machines are really important. Now coming to storage, blob storage, Azure files and premium storage. So these services are important. This is for binary, this is a shared file system, this is a newly introduced blob storage, but it is more faster, it has more throughput. Now coming to networking, so you should obviously know virtual network, which is the base, and then load balancers, DNS, traffic manager, and VPN gateway. So these are some of the services which you have to be very confident in, because load balancers are used for applications, so to balance the load across multiple virtual machines, and you should obviously know that. And you need to know VPN gateway if you are establishing a connection between AWS and Azure or any other cloud services with Azure, because VPN gateways can give you a secure connection between multiple cloud services and also multiple services within the Azure cloud itself. So now knowing all of this is really important. And then coming to data, yeah, you can see there is SQL database. There's also SQL data warehouse, but as an architect at the beginning, you don't need to know about data warehouses that much. So you should learn. You should also learn about Reddit cache and all that. So a little knowledge about all of them is really important, but I'm just marking which are the things which you'll have to be strong in. So SQL databases, document DB is currently Cosmos DB, tables, really important. Then backup and site recovery. So backup is for taking a backup of, let's say, the database or the virtual machine or whatever service you want. Then site recovery. So let's say you're hosting an application, and if you want to recover that site to a point in time recovery, you can do that using that service. Then coming to web and mobile. So web applications, API management, logic applications are really important. So mobile applications are not that important right now, because for that you should also know how to develop. But these services, that is web and mobile services, are again really important. And portal and active directory. So portal is basically the website, and active directory is for creating users, creating groups, and basically managing identity and security. So there are so many other services. Let's say you also have to know key vault, multi-factor authentication for security purposes. So these are IoT and analytics tools. So there are some other tools which are not mentioned here, which are Azure Monitor, metrics. There is alerts and actions which you'll have to know, and also understanding how Azure SDK works is also really important. So these are the major services which you'll have to be really confident in and really thorough in. Now coming down, so how to get started. So this is the last part which I'm going to take, and after this my colleague will continue. So now Intellipaat blog and YouTube channel which we have, and we provided to you for free. So you can check out intellipaat.blog, in which we have a complete tutorial on Azure, which you can take up, which you can basically start learning about Azure, the basics of it, and understand how it works. And you can check out our YouTube channel Intellipaat, in which we have a complete Azure course with demos, hands-ons, and projects. So basically you can start off your learning process from our YouTube channel itself. And then if you want to take up industry standard professional course, in which we cover a lot of projects and a lot of case studies, a lot of assignments, you can visit our main website, which is intellipaat.com, where I'll be taking you right now. Okay, so we discussed about 303 and 304. So in this particular certification, both of this is covered, 303 as well as 304. And also this particular certification is in collaboration with Microsoft. So you'll be getting a certification in behalf of Microsoft from us. So basically coming down, so this is how your certification will look. You'll get a certification from us, who are in partnership with Microsoft, as well as you'll get a Microsoft emblem, which basically means you are getting an award certification from Microsoft themselves. So now going up here, so this is the part which I wanted to cover, because this is the only technical part over here, and the rest of the part, that is certification, curriculum, key features, everything can be taken by my colleague. So now starting from this, handling data migration based on provided architectural requirements. So using the Azure Migrate service, we will create and migrate Azure virtual machines, creating storage accounts and application gateways for aiding Azure Migrate. Basically, in this particular project, we will be creating virtual machines and migrating it to another region, or we'll be migrating it within the region, just copying it using Azure Migrate service. So for this, we'll have to learn more about it. Let's say you have an architecture in one region, you want the exact same architecture in another region, then in that case, you can use Azure Migrate services. So we'll be learning more about that in the course. Next comes implementing a new architecture to the company's website. So you should be able to create a complete Azure architecture. So we'll be helping you and guiding you with these projects. So you should be able to create a complete architecture on Azure, in which we are going to host a website. The thing is, you don't need to know coding or anything, because we'll be providing you all the code which is required. For example, if you want to host a website, we'll be providing you the contents to host that website. So now you should be able to do that and host that website successfully. And then also building a dashboard to monitor your website. So as I told you, monitoring is also important in Azure Architect. And you can see, using Azure Monitor and Azure Metric services, you should be creating a dashboard to monitor the company's website, which got hosted over here. Okay, so using log analytics, alerts and actions, application insights. So there are multiple tools. So using them, we'll be implementing a monitoring dashboard, which is used to monitor the company's website, which is hosted on an Azure architecture. So now there are multiple case studies as well. So introduction to cloud, Azure storage. So after each module, we'll have a case study and an assignment which we'll be completing. So this is what over here you can see access management in Azure, adding users to the organization's custom Active Directory domain and providing access to some of the resources and services managed by them. The password authentication method and MFA must be set up with a verification option. It basically means you should be able to set up the multi-factor authentication option. So when you're logging into Azure using username and your password, the next logical step would be to ask you an MFA code which will be in your authenticator application in your mobile phone or your laptop itself. So now that will be taught obviously in the course. So if you want to learn more about that, you can just visit our site. So you can just visit our site and check out all the curriculum over here, what you'll be learning, what are the things which are covered. Over here you can see what are the skills which are covered, the major skills, planning and designing Azure infrastructure, securing it, Azure VM app services, VM scale sets, Kubernetes and container services, VNet subnets, network security groups, DNS, identity and access management, monitor, metrics, migrate, site recovery, databases, and Cosmos DB. So what are the skills which I showed you in the PPT? So everything is covered over here, and I think I covered. So this is what I wanted to show. Yeah. So a total of 12 projects. You will get 12 guided projects, and so if you're struggling somewhere, we'll be able to help you out in this particular course. So if you're doing the same thing in YouTube, you're on your own because you'll be looking at the project and trying to emulate it or duplicate it. But over here, we'll be teaching you from scratch in which you can create the whole project by yourself. Okay, so this is my part, and I'll just connect my colleague right now and they'll start off from here. Thank you. Meet you in another session.